In the story, The Moose and the Sparrow, it's based about a character by the name of Cecil getting bullied by a character by the name of Moose Madden. The short story is narrated by someone called Anderson, a leader and an older person who works in the lumber camp cohorts. This this story takes place around the early 1900s in a lumber camp in British Columbia. The main character of the short story is Cecil. Cecil is my favorite character because, well, first he's the main character, which makes him the most likable, and he just knew how to handle situations. He made Moose so jealous that it made him hate him more, and he came from nothing and he made himself into something. The characters in the story felt really real to me because bullying is a real thing that happens, and the story encompasses that a lot. And it shows us how our main character feels, even after hiding all his feelings. The story did keep me guessing because it was a ride to read the entire time because we start off seeing Moose bully Cecil worse and worse, but we don't know where it's gonna go. It eventually comes to the end where we see Cecil kill Moose, and that is honestly just a turn of events that no one saw. My favorite part of the book was when Cecil opens up to Anderson because it shows such a different side of Cecil that we never saw. Because we always thought earlier in the book that Cecil was this person who let nothing get to him. And honestly, just seeing him open up and being so vulnerable to someone else is something I liked a lot. A scene that was written well was the end of the book. Even though I didn't like it specifically, I feel like it was still written very well because it left the reader with a lot of confusion, but it also answered the question very vaguely, which left the reader wanting more, which is why I didn't like it, but I felt like it was written very well. I feel like the story made me cry because it had a very sad tone. Throughout the story, we see Cecil getting bullied, and a lot of sad scenes, including the scene that I talked about earlier, where Cecil breaks down. Bullying is a real thing, which is why it hit me so hard. Because as a person who's gone through bullying before and has had other people like that I know go through bullying, it opens up a very real thing to me, which I think about when I read the story. The story did keep me interested throughout, because as I said, it was so unpredictable that it just every time you lost interest in the story, something new happened, and it reeled you back into the book. There's a lot of media that I've seen that has related to this because bullying's a real thing that a lot of people talk about, and even things such as PSAs on anti-bullying, such as ads that play on TV. Those are things that are very prevalent, and even in school, when we get taught about bullying and when we watch videos about it, those are things that I see that reminds me of this book. Something I didn't like about the story, as I mentioned earlier, is that it ends on a cliffhanger. It adds a lot to the story, but I would prefer personally that it didn't end on a cliffhanger and it ended with us knowing what happened to Cecil. I think that a lot of people would enjoy the story, especially older kids. Yeah, when I say most people, I talk about people who are of an older age because the book is very dark when it turns to the end, which isn't suitable for younger audiences. And I think older kids would find this best because there's a lot of things going around on in their lives that relate to this, and this would teach them a lot. Like personally, it taught me a lot because an example of this is the death of Moose Madden because he gets drunk, then he just foreseeably falls into a pit of darkness, a a really deep ravine, and then dies, which is something that you wouldn't really want to read when you're younger. My final thoughts on this story is that it was a great story which teaches us both about the effects of reading and keeps us like hooked in the entire time. Something many anti-bullying PSAs and things we see in school don't help us do. But this teaches us about bullying while keeping us in the entire time and not and making us actually want to read it. I would rate this book 5 stars out of 5 stars because it teaches bullying from many points of views. It shows us how fragile of a man Moose Madden is, and it shows us that how much that affects Cecil at the end of the book. We don't really see it earlier because he hides his feelings, but later in the book we see it very heavily. And I think that except for the ending, there aren't many flaws in this book, and the ending is my personal opinion that I don't like. So I feel like the book would definitely be a must read to anyone. In conclusion, I think this short story is a must read for anyone, as I said before. It shows the values of bullying, which I said before, and it keeps the reader engaged, which I said before. It's something that a lot of anti-bullying media has a problem with, which this book encompasses fully because it keeps us reading the entire time and it teaches us about bullying while also keeping us entertained, which I honestly think is a piece of media, which is a thing that a lot of pieces of media can't do. That's why I think it's one of the best stories to read.